Did the people of Lebanon, Missouri have cannibals living in their midst? This video takes a closer look at the Cassidy Rainwater case and the evidence collected so far. James Phelps and Timothy Norton both recently had failed attempts to get out on bail while awaiting trial on charges related to the kidnapping and killing of Cassidy Rainwater in Dallas County, Missouri. Both men have preliminary hearing court dates the first week of February 2022. Timothy Norton has a court date on February 2nd, while James Phelps will be in court on the 4th. At the preliminary hearings, it will be determined whether the state has enough evidence to move ahead to trial. According to court documents, the evidence against James Phelps and his co-defendant, Timothy Norton, includes graphic photos of Cassidy Rainwater, as well as her remains. Part of Cassidy's remains were found on James Phelps' property in a freezer with the date 7/24 on them. Some reports state that her bones were found elsewhere on Phelps' property, while other reports state that Cassidy's bones were located on the neighboring property, which belongs to Cassidy's grandfather, Bill Rainwater. Further evidence includes Timothy Norton's confession during police interviews. He stated that while he held Cassidy's legs down, James Phelps placed a bag over her head and strangled her. Then he helped James Phelps carry Cassidy's body outside to a crane where she was tied up and dressed out like a deer. Timothy Norton has a motions hearing on December 21st. His original attorney has withdrawn, and Thomas Kirsch, an attorney out of Jefferson City, has offered to take over. Cassidy Rainwater was reported missing in August. Law enforcement was told that her last known whereabouts were at James Phelps' home. Officers went to the property and interviewed him right after the missing persons report was filed. At that time, he told investigators that he had not seen her in weeks. Then, in mid-September, FBI investigators forwarded a cyber tip titled Cassidy, depicting photos of a woman partially nude and in a cage, as well as photos of that same woman bound to a gantry crane commonly used in deer processing. The images also depicted her eviscerated and dismembered. One of the Dallas County detectives recognized the woman as Cassidy Rainwater. Investigators returned to James Phelps' property, and they recognized items there that were in the photos that were provided to the FBI. After searching James Phelps' phone, officials discovered 7 photos of Cassidy Rainwater. Some images were of her in the cage, others showed her tied to the crane and being dressed out like a deer. He was arrested immediately. Timothy Norton was arrested not long after. While processing the scene at James Phelps' home, investigators collected the crane, the cage, and packages in the freezer that appeared to be human flesh labeled 7/24. Additionally, according to the sheriff's office, skeletal remains believed to belong to Cassidy Rainwater were also found on James Phelps' property. In all, over 200 pieces of evidence were collected over several days. After DNA testing, the remains in the freezer and the remains scattered on Bill Rainwater's property were determined to be Cassidy's. Investigators say that the men dismembered her body in a bathtub in the home. Mysteriously, James Phelps' home burned to the ground shortly after the evidence was collected. Investigators discovered a couple of explosive devices, and the cause of the fire has been determined to be arson. Early on, Sheriff Rice made a public rant saying that people should not be gossiping about cannibalism or multiple victims. But now that some of the evidence has been made public, those early rumors seem to be more fact-based. Rumors that were shared with me included cannibalism, the dark web, a woman strung up like a deer, meat hooks in the bathroom above the tub, multiple victims, and accomplices. What do you guys think? At this time, James Phelps and Timothy Norton have not been charged with crimes related to anyone other than Cassidy Rainwater, but Dallas County prosecuting attorney Jonathan Barker said that Timothy Norton told law enforcement that he and James Phelps would troll the internet and a nearby Walmart for victims. Multiple victims. Sheriff Rice says this is an ongoing investigation. If there is anyone who believes they may have information regarding this case, they can call investigators at the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. Let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments below. Thank you for watching Another Day in the Car with Jules.